Hey wrestlers, Dr. Josh McClain here at Body Rejuvenation. Today we're going to talk about how we start establishing our ideal wrestling weight for next season. Yeah, it's already time to start thinking about that. So I put together a little bit of a presentation here. It's going to take 2 minutes. I want you guys to listen through this and just start understanding it. There's going to be a link down below to download your Excel sheet to start tracking your weight each week. And I'm going to explain through the process now. So come on inside. All right, guys, so when we're looking at this, it's really coming down to understanding the trends. And what I mean by that is we're just going to lay out the calendar here. You'll see from March through February. And why I'm doing March through February is most of the state tournaments, most of the national tournaments kind of get done around that March time, maybe early April, so you can adjust this accordingly. But what we're going to start to look at is 3 different types of trends that we see with the wrestlers that we work with every day in the facility here. So when we start looking at this, we have the first wrestler who's really devoted and almost like too healthily strict on their season, right? So you'll see starting at March, after the state tournament, after the national tournament gets done, they barely put on any weight. And when we start looking at this, even all the way through the summer, I mean, they put on a few pounds here and there, but then they cut themselves right back down and they're devoted to the sport and they're really trying to keep their weight down. They're eating right, but it's just a little bit too clean. They might not even be eating enough. That might be the situation that we run into a lot here, is that these guys don't ever allow their body to grow in a healthy manner. The other effect that we see is actually the opposite of this, which is a very unhealthy relationship, where right after the state or national tournament, they balloon up that 10, 15 pounds, and then throughout the rest of the summer, they are eating like crap. They're lifting, they're working out, but it's really not as much muscle mass as it is fat mass. And then once it comes to the season time, early November, they just cut hard, right? And they cut really hard and they lose all their water, they cut down all their food. Now all the mass that they put on, they're completely depleting their system of any nutrients, and they're expecting more and more out of their body at this point as we're going into early next year, but yet they aren't able to perform because they don't have the right nutrients on board. And I'll go into some of the risk and the limitations here in a second. But the ideal model that we want to see is that after that state tournament, we do put on 5 to 6 pounds of healthy mass because we start ramping back up what we're eating. We're fully hydrated, right? We're starting to train hard again with our strength training. And then over the summer, we see even a little bit more weight gain just because we're out of school. We're lifting really heavy. We've got more time to devote to some of our training. Our nutrition, we got endless supply all day long. And then as we start to go into school again, it might be football or another fall sport that picks up a little bit. Or you just start training again, start getting your wrestling back on the mat. You start getting back in 3, 4, 5 days a week now instead of just a couple over the summer. And we start changing the way that we're lifting as well. We're starting to build up some muscular endurance more for the season. And then during the season, you'll see here that we actually stayed up. And at some point, we plateaued right about here. So I know that I'm eating right, I'm training right, everything's going right, I'm sleeping good, my recovery, I feel good, and my weight starts to plateau out. And now each week when I'm taking my weight, it's staying about the same consistently. From this standpoint, we do not want to try to get back down to here, right? I mean, the consideration of growth constantly as you're a young child or even a growing adult, you're constantly trying to grow. And if we start limiting it back down here, just because that's the weight that I think I need to be at, I'm not listening to my body and I'm not understanding the science and the physiology that goes behind this. So we're going to go one step farther, and I just want to kind of break this down so you guys can understand it in very basic terms. Weight gain and growing are desirable, right? Like, we want to grow, we want to get stronger, we want our body to get healthier, right? We want our bones to develop, we want all of these things to happen, and that is critical for us to be able to maintain that through not only out the season, but throughout the year as well. To do this, to understand, I mean, we need to gain some mass, but to do this, it needs to be eating right, training right, hydrating well, sleeping well, right? Like, there's so many physiological principles that go into this growth and development that we need to consider, and not just where we're trying to get our weight to for next year. Then we start looking at the trends, right? And this is where we put together an Excel sheet for you guys to download, where every Sunday or Monday or Tuesday, whatever day it may be, you're going to consistently wake up. First thing that morning, you're just going to measure your weight, and you're just going to graph this out, because now what you're going to start to see is these trends again that we just talked about. And now when you come to us in the fall and you're like, hey, what weight should I go? I'll say, hey, what are your trends looking like, right? Like without the trends, I have no idea. I have no idea what you've been doing. I have no idea what it looks like. I have no idea where your nutrition is. So all of those things are laid out for you in that Excel sheet that we're telling you to download. So consistently, and the point is here consistent, right? I mean, if I take it on a Sunday morning and I just pigged out hard on Saturday, that might not be ideal. If I take it Sunday afternoon versus Sunday morning every week, like it's going to change depending upon the time of day. So try to keep as many of those things consistent as you can so that the measures and the trends will guide you accurately. Then we start going into the plateau phase, right? So when it starts to plateau, now from here, I want you to go into those practices and say, how much can I be drifting, right? Like how much do I lose in one single practice? If that might be 1 to 2 pounds, maybe not even for some of the youth. For the high school guys, that might be more 4 to 5, maybe even 6 pounds in one practice. So I know if that is how much I'm losing and I'm eating right, I'm training right, and my weight is plateaued, I shouldn't be going lower than this weight. If I am, now I start running into some serious risks that we're going to cover on the next slide here of detrimental growth, right? And detrimental performance nonetheless. So then the last thing I really want you guys to understand is your body is constantly growing throughout the season. And if we start limiting everything down, if we start cutting lower than what our body needs, it's going to go into survival mode versus growth mode. So what I mean by that is that the hormones get affected, your tissues start to get weakened, right? I'm just going to do anything I have to survive. I'm not going to do anything to actually enhance my performance. I'm not going to do anything to enhance my growth, right? My health is a significant limitation here because I've chose to go below what my body can actually do to survive. So it's going to start limiting itself down. It's a natural thing. You cannot stop it from going into the survival mode if you are starving it from nutrients, starving it from hydration, and not letting it get the nutrients and the things that it needs to build and grow. So then we start going into the risk versus reward, right? Like, hey, state championship, I get it. National title, yeah, amen, right? Like, the thing that you have to understand is that actually when you're doing this, you're going to get a decreased performance, right? So you might not even be able to get to that next level. You might not actually fulfill that state championship or that national or the world, Olympic, whatever it may be, because you're limiting your body, right? And our decreased happiness, man, it's a battle. And when you're cutting your nuts off and your body feels like crap and it's just a brutal experience for you, you're not going to be happy doing it. And if we're truly concerned about the sport of wrestling and trying to enhance this and get more people involved, the weight cutting traditional approach is not it. Man, it's not desirable by anybody. Then we start talking about the decreased hormones and puberty and growth. And I get so many parents that come to me and ask, like, why is my kid not growing? Why is my kid not growing? It's because they aren't putting on weight. You know, they aren't trying to eat more. They aren't doing the training the right way. And we stop seeing these hormones produce the way they are because we shunt them every year, right? And it takes a while for those hormones to get back in a natural cycle. So when it is time to grow, they don't know what's going on because we've shunted them for so many years and we've tried to limit their potential because we've starved our body. We haven't given it the nutrients and the hydration that we need. Then we start looking at the decreased bone density and we start seeing injury risk go through the roof, right? Bone density and the tissue strength, those two are very important. And if my body doesn't have nutrients that I'm putting in through my mouth, right? If I'm not going to fill my gas tank up, then I got to find fuel from somewhere else. So it's going to start to break down my bones and use it as nutrients. It's going to start to break down the muscles that I already have and use that as energy and nutrients to survive, right? Survival mode 101. I'm going to break down whatever I have. I'm going to hunt and gather whatever's around me and I'm going to eat off that. And then we go into the increased side, right? Increased injury risk. It's a huge, huge, huge increase that most people don't even consider. And then we go into the increased frustration. And again, this goes back to that happiness factor. I mean, it's not fun and it's not going to be an enjoyable experience. And they're just going to get frustrated with the sport. And overall, it's going to lead to a negative consequence, you know. And then the last part, you know, and this I hit on all the time from a physical therapy standpoint, because your development until 26 to 28 years old is the most critical time that you have, right? After that, it's just a downhill slope, and research supports this over and over again. That is, if you're doing everything right, those ages are the peak of the peak. That's the best of the best that you're gonna get. That's the best that your body's gonna develop. After that, I mean, if you're coming from a very low stage, you can still go uphill a little ways, but it's all gonna be relatively downhill from there. So understand that these years of your life of growth and development are not only for the first 20 to 24 of your sports performance, but really for the rest of your life. So if those are things that are important to you, if the health and the longevity for many years to come, change the traditional way of doing this. And I hope this helps kind of explain some of those scenarios that many people and many wrestlers go through on a yearly basis. You know, and I want you guys to understand what those trends look like and how to go about that. All right, Rockstar, I hope that kind of helped out. I hope you got some good information from that. If you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out. You know, this is just a great way to start watching those trends. Download that Excel sheet above, around, below this video and get started just watching what it does, right? I mean, you just type it in weekly, it will start to graph it out for you so that you have a better idea of what is going on and how to address this going into next season. Again, thank you. Keep impacting the world and keep spreading smiles.